Get the unmissable news stories of the day.
This is the Beijing Hour.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Tian Lu with you on this Friday, March the 27th, 2026. You're listening to the Beijing Hour, coming to you live from the Chinese capital. On today's program, the Boao Forum for Asia concludes its annual conference in Hainan, highlighting open development and regional integration. US President Donald Trump has extended a pause on planned strikes on Iranian energy sites for 10 more days amid reports that Tehran has responded to Washington's peace proposal. And Chinese Vice President Han Zheng continues his visit in Africa, meeting the South African president. In business, China sees fast industrial profit growth in first 2 months. In sports, Italy is 1 win away from ending their 12-year World Cup absence. In culture and entertainment, cultural diversity at a Shanghai university. Now checking today's top stories. This year's Boao Forum for Asia annual conference has concluded in the southern island of Hainan. International observers say China's proposals are contributing to global governance solutions and shared development.
The Boao Forum for Asia focuses on key issues that carry global significance. These are exactly what countries around the world are looking for and what we all aspire to. It is a platform to talk about peace, development, and the future, to safeguard the survival and well-being of all humanity, to maintain global stability, and to promote mutual respect among nations.
The development of the Hainan Free Trade Port itself sends a clear message. Countries should not turn inward. On the contrary, stability in international relations depends on greater openness. In other words, trade, financial ties, and cooperation between nations all fundamentally require more openness and dialogue.
Researcher Cesar Nkala with the University of Johannesburg says the forum is bringing stability and a positive energy into an increasingly uncertain world.
It is a platform to promote cooperation and dialogue. This is very important in a world where countries seem to, especially in the West, seem to be concerned about their narrow national interest. The Boao Forum, I think it will help to paint a broader global picture and then drive, I think, the world towards a more equitable economic system from which everyone can benefit.
Dakai has been closely following the event since day one. He shares with us some of the highlights and key takeaways at this year's conference.
It's a very packed 4 days, and over the past few days, what we heard the most is the confidence towards Asia's future. Now, this is one of the continents that is one of the most dynamic growth engines to world economy. Leaders and business executives talked about the importance of connectivity, and in fact, former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon put forward a new initiative yesterday at the opening plenary calling for Asia's regional collaboration. He said the mutual trust within the region matters even more when we face headwinds from the outside. Now, there are also talks about staying committed to free trade, upholding true multilateralism, firmly safeguarding the UN-centered international system and a world order underpinned by international law. We heard from Chinese officials at the forum yesterday saying that China will continue expanding high-standard opening up and institutional opening up, aligning globally in terms of laws, standards, and regulations. Justin Yifu Lin, he's the former chief economist at the World Bank, he said that despite deglobalization and geopolitical tensions, China's well-positioned to achieve its 2026 GDP growth target of 4.5% to 5%. That, he said, will contribute around 30% of global growth. Now, one thing we can't ignore is the tensions and conflicts in the Middle East. On Wednesday, I had the chance to talk with Gilles Gaponier, Vice President of the International Committee of the Red Cross, or ICRC. He said their main concern is that some of the fundamental rules that have been agreed upon by all states are too often disregarded. And it's very important nowadays that even in armed conflict, the Geneva Conventions, these rules that safeguard our common humanity in wars, are protected. Now, attendees believe that this is absolutely key nowadays to bring together this, what they call multi-stakeholder dialogue, finding common grounds even as differences remain, and to seek better solutions to pressing challenges that the world is facing.
That was Daikai reporting. Zhang Jun is the Secretary General of the Boao Forum for Asia. He says the event's mission remains the same, but the focus has shifted to address current global circumstances.
Since its founding, the forum's mission has been to promote Asian economic integration and regional cooperation. This has not changed to this day. What has changed is the broader global environment. The current situation is different from the environment Asia faced during the last financial crisis. Due to these shifts in the external environment, the forum's focus and the topics of discussion have also evolved. First, under the current circumstances, Asia holds a more important position in the global economic landscape. It continues to serve as an important engine for world economic growth. Second, in the process of global economic transformation, Asia has not only kept pace with global developments, but has also strived to stay ahead, particularly in digital transformation and the green transition.
That was Zhang Jun, Secretary General of the Boao Forum for Asia. Friday also marks the 100th day of the island-wide special customs operations in Hainan province. The Free Trade Port in South China has reported a surge in the proportion of zero-tariff categories from 21 to 74% of all taxable items, covering over 6,600 product categories. Over 7,000 new foreign trade enterprises have been registered. The transaction volume of multifunctional free trade accounts has reached nearly $20 billion. Foreign trade has exceeded $11 billion since the special customs operations began. Over 180 transactions were conducted under the zero-tariff policy. The average customs clearance time has been reduced by 26%. The special customs operations have also facilitated more travel, with over 860,000 inbound and outbound passenger trips reported in the first 100 days. For more on this, Wang Zihang spoke to Chief Investment Officer Chen Jiahe at Novem Arcade Technologies.
What's your overall take on the progress the Hainan FTP has seen since the island-wide special customs operations began 100 days ago?
Well, we have actually seen quite many changes in the local society and the economy down here in Hainan. Because I'm personally living in Haikou, I can just feel all these kinds of enthusiasm towards the opening of Hainan to the global market. You see much more foreigners are traveling to Hainan province. There has been a very significant increase this year by about, I think it's 50 or 60% over last year. So you see quite many foreigners, Europeans, Americans, Asians working on the streets of Hainan. You can tell from the outlook. And the local businesses are also getting much more opportunities. People are excited. And you see quite a lot of capital rushing into Hainan Island, either from other provinces of China or from global market. People come here to discuss about where are the opportunities, are there more opportunities with this free trade island policy. And one of the most obvious outcome is that the hotels are overbooked over here. The prices are rising. It's becoming harder for you to get a room because so many people are actually rushing in.
The 100-day mark also coincides with the final day of this year's Boao Forum for Asia annual conference, which is also the first edition held since the special customs operation started. What roles do you think they could play in further expanding China's high-standard opening up?
Well, the Boao Forum, once they have been, it is held in Hainan, really tells people that Hainan is so important as an opening window or opening door of China to the world. This very important forum is held here. right in the in the middle of this province that is fully open to the world. And also for the cooperation between China and other economies, this forum is very important because it tells all the economies around the world, all the countries, that China will always open up its borders and its economies. China will never close its borders, its economic border. China will not start a tariff war, all these kind of things. So this very strong attitude from the world's second largest economy brings a lot of confidence to other economies, brings more confidence to the global trade. Therefore, this provides a very solid support to the growing of the global economy.
That was Chief Investment Officer Chen Jiahe at Novem Arcade Technologies. Coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump has extended a pause on planned strikes on Iranian energy sites for 10 more days amid reports that Tehran has responded to Washington's peace proposal.
You've been listening to programs from CGTN Radio.
CGTN Radio.
We invite you to visit us online for more audio, pictures, and in-depth reports. At radio.cgtn.com, you can access a wide range of programs and find your favorite news, talk, features, entertainment shows, and podcasts. Hear the difference with CGTN Radio.
Now it's 11 minutes past the hour. Tehran has reportedly sent its official response to a 15-point agreement proposed by the U.S. to end the conflict. Tasnim news agency says Iran's response was formally issued through intermediaries on Wednesday. Tehran has also presented its conditions and is waiting for a response from Washington. Indirect talks between the two sides are reportedly taking place, with messages being relayed by Pakistan. In the meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump has extended a pause on planned strikes on Iranian energy facilities for 10 more days, claiming talks are going very well. However, the Wall Street Journal reports the Pentagon is considering sending 10,000 more troops to the Middle East. Ehsan Kivani has more from the Iranian city of Yazid.
A Tasnim news agency close to the IRGC has quoted an informed source that Iran has stated that the enemy's aggression and terrorism must come to an end. Concrete conditions must be established to ensure that war will not be repeated. War reparations and compensation must be guaranteed and clearly stipulated, and the cessation of hostilities must take effect across all fronts and for all resistance groups that participated in this battle through the region, including Hezbollah in Lebanon. Regarding the latest invasions, in an early morning airstrike Thursday, 2 residential areas in the central city of Isfahan were hit, destroying several units and damaging others. State media said the injured were hospitalized, but no casualty figures are available for now. In the northeastern city of Mashhad, state media reported a projectile explosion near the airport Wednesday evening. This is the first airstrike on the city in the current war, although Mashhad was hit a few times during last June's 12-day war. Foreign media reported the killing of the IRGC naval commander Alireza Tangisiri in the southern port city of Bandar Abbas. Meanwhile, official reports said 3 were killed and 7 were injured in an attack on a residential building in Bandar Abbas, so it is unclear if these 2 incidents are connected. According to Iran's Red Crescent Society, the death toll over nearly 4 weeks of war in Iran has exceeded 1,900, including over 200 children.
That was Ehsan Kivani reporting from Iran. Before announcing the 10-day pause in attacks on Iranian energy plants, President Trump had threatened to increase pressure on Iran if it did not make a deal. The conflict has massively disrupted shipping, sending crude oil prices up nearly 40%. Nitrogen-based fertilizers critical to food production have jumped nearly 50% in price. Owen Fairclough has more.
Anyone looking for clarity about exactly where the United States and Iran stand right now on a potential resolution of their conflict might have struggled watching Donald Trump's first cabinet meeting since the conflict began. Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, who's been central to all of this, said that Iran has rebuffed any U.S. attempts at negotiations, only for Trump to say that Iran is desperate for some kind of deal. Of course, with the conflict moving so quickly, it's perfectly possible to have multiple narratives. Nevertheless, we have had clarity that Iran has confirmed receipt of the US's 15-point plan with various conditions for some kind of resolution. And Trump himself zoned in on one of the thorniest problems. Here's the US president.
But they now have the chance, that is Iran, to permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions and to chart a new path forward. We'll see if they want to do it. If they don't, we're their worst nightmare.
Trump was referring there to the central problem in all of this, the long-standing contention by Iran that it's enriching uranium for civilian or peaceful purposes, and the long-standing counter by the US that Iran is trying to develop nuclear weapons, the backstory to this conflict and indeed tensions in the region. And yet Trump later said he's extending his deadline for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, that vital waterway, until April the 6th, under threat of bombing Iran's energy infrastructure. He also appeared to claim that Iran was offering some kind of sweetener to a deal by allowing around 10 commercial vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, per Iran's previous threats to fire on commercial traffic passing through that area. But Trump also refused to rule out potentially seizing Iran's crude oil, its most valuable export, comparing that to the seizure of Venezuela's exports following the forcible seizure of President Nicolas Maduro. All of this as the United Nations warned this Thursday that should this conflict continue for between 3 and 6 months, it will imperil global food security, with oil prices shooting up, fertilizer supplies also choked in the Strait of Hormuz, all of this having a big impact on food production.
That was Owen Fairclough. Americans have been feeling the pain at the pump for weeks now as the war with Iran continues to disrupt the strategic oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz. Fuel prices have spiked, driving up transport, airfare, and shipping costs, expenses that could soon start showing up in everything from groceries to utility bills. Economists warn that if the conflict drags on, higher energy prices could fuel broader inflation, squeezing household budgets and slowing spending across the U.S. economy. Tony Waterman reports from Washington.
Paul Shields watches his pennies. The Army veteran is on a fixed income, and the recent spike in gas prices is eating into his budget.
It's horrible. I fill up like around half a tank. For this car, it may cost me like $27. I just spent $40. So that's a huge jump.
Prices at the pump have surged nearly 35% since the conflict in Iran began, putting fresh pressure on households already strained by an affordability crisis. And some Americans are now worried that gas is just the first pain point.
It seems like everything kind of follows the fuel. You know, once the fuel goes up for everything, airline, cabs, Uber, your personal vehicle, tractor trailers, diesel is high. So once the prices go up on automotive or automobiles or transportation, then everything seems to tank and follow.
Groceries could be next, hit by the triple threat of soaring costs of fuel, fertilizer, and freight, all linked to Iran's stranglehold on the Strait of Hormuz. Fresh produce, meat, dairy, and seafood are expected to see the fastest price spikes due to their reliance on temperature-controlled, fuel-intensive logistics. Iranian strikes on natural gas facilities could also drive utility prices higher, with the U.S. getting more than 40% of its electricity needs from natural gas.
That will put a drag on consumer pocketbooks, consumer spending. It will actually delay certain expenditures. And so what that means, the U.S. could see a recession. It would likely be a relatively mild recession if it does happen. But certainly you won't see a boom as a result of what's going on in the United States.
The Trump administration is trying to offset rising prices by easing oil sanctions on Russia and Iran, temporarily allowing foreign flag ships carrying oil at U.S. ports and tapping into the U.S. oil reserve. Experts say the only thing that will drive prices lower is a ceasefire. But even then, it will take months for things to return to normal.
Between the infrastructure damage, the uncertainty in the region, we see it's going to be hard to get to a path back to $60 per day. We see a floor at around $70 to $80 per barrel.
For how long?
For at least the next 6 to 12 months.
Which means the higher prices Americans are paying for everyday essentials could remain elevated well into next year.
That was Tony Waterman on the rising cost of living in the U.S. amid the war in Iran. The chief economist of the UN Food and Agriculture Organization is warning of a grim outlook for food prices and the disruption of crop yields amid the intensifying conflict in Iran. Maximo Torero warned that farmers globally will be affected unless the picture changes.
Fertilizer prices have already risen sharply. Middle East granular urea climbed 19% in the first week of March, reached $590 per ton. Egyptian Orient, for example, spiked 28%. Because the natural gas is a primary element to provide nitrogen fertilizers, this could also lead to a significant increase between 50 to 20% higher in the first half of 2026. So this means that for farmers, they are facing double shock. They have more expensive fertilizers alongside rising fuel costs, which are being used across the value chain to be able to produce the commodity that you eat in the markets around. This also impacts irrigation costs.
Farmers around the world are already facing fertilizer shortages and rising costs following the disruption of shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, which handles a third of global fertilizer trade. Rising natural gas prices are also driving up costs. The economist has said the poorest farmers in developing countries may feel the squeeze first, while higher fuel prices can ripple through processing, transport, and delivery. He also said if the strait is reopened and all goes back to normal within the next few weeks, the market should be able to absorb the initial shock. But he also warned that the delays and unstable oil markets may lead to a food price spike, making it bad for consumers. Torero says it is vital to diversify import sources beyond the Gulf, avoid export restrictions in the midterm, and find a way to increase resilience in the future. India has announced a cut in excise duties on petrol and diesel imports while dismissing reports of a looming lockdown. The federal government reduced the excise duty by 10 rupees or around 11 US cents per litre on both fuels, bringing the rate down to 3 rupees per litre for petrol and 0 for diesel. The country's petroleum minister said export taxes have also been introduced as global fuel prices surge. He added that refineries exporting fuel will now be required to pay the tax. The minister also rejected speculation about a lockdown, calling the reports completely false and confirming that no such proposal is under consideration. The Iran conflict is affecting nations across Africa. The Egyptian government has capped the price of unsubsidized bread sold in private bakeries, reviving price controls on staple food. Egypt relies heavily on bread, making price changes politically sensitive in the country of about 120 million people. Cairo residents have largely welcomed the move, but they believe a strict monitoring program is needed. Yasser Hakim speaks with local residents and experts to learn more.
A bakery in Cairo is operating like any normal day. Despite the recent price hikes in the market, a government-enforced price cap on unsubsidized bread is in place at a range that reaches 4 cents for the heaviest loaf of 80 grams.
The prices haven't changed before or after the war. It's a very good idea and will not put any additional load on our expenses as families.
The price of bread is the same. I appreciate efforts by the government, but they have to ensure bakeries are applying the price cap. We need strict monitoring of bakeries to make sure bakeries adopt it.
Bread is a major food staple for Egyptians, available in nearly every meal. That's why, since the Iran war broke out, the government has quickly moved to prevent any price increase that could lead to a public backlash.
There was an increase in prices of wheat and flour globally due to the hike in freight and shipping costs. Commodity suppliers raised prices of wheat and flour by thousands of Egyptian pounds, and that forced bakeries to increase bread prices. Therefore, the government intervened.
Officials say they're making it up for bakeries worried of mounting losses due to the price limits.
There are no problems facing bakeries because the government is paying the difference in cost to bakeries so they can maintain the cap without incurring any losses.
Egypt has a 6-month stock of strategic commodities like wheat, rice and flour, which would buy some time for the North African country. Meanwhile, the war has so far had a limited impact on hard currency yielding sectors like tourism and foreign direct investments, though remittances from Egyptians living in the Gulf region is set to significantly drop if the war persists. There is also growing pressure on Egyptians as a hike in international oil prices forced the government to raise fuel prices by 18% last week.
The new fuel prices in Egypt have increased prices of most goods and services in the market. This expects to push inflation above 16% and lead to a slowdown or a recession in the economy.
In response, the government has rolled out a multi-billion-dollar social welfare program that includes raising minimum wage, salaries and pensions to protect the low-income earners from the impact of a prolonged war.
That was Yasser Hakim on how the prolonged conflict in the Middle East is impacting the Egyptian economy. Coming up, Chinese Vice President Han Zheng continues his visit in Africa, meeting the South African president.
Post Plus, a selection of the best podcasts in China, covering history, customs, music, literature, and in-depth dialogues. Find your way to a wealth of Chinese culture and thinking, all on Post Plus.
That's 26 minutes past the hour. Chinese Vice President Han Zheng has met South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, with both sides pledging to deepen cooperation and elevate ties. The Vice President emphasized China's commitment to deepening the all-round strategic cooperative partnership with South Africa, noting that China's 15th five-year plan will further open the country to the world. Han highlighted new opportunities, including the upcoming full implementation of zero-tariff measures for African countries. President Ramaphosa expressed appreciation for the zero-tariff measures and voiced a readiness to enhance coordination for common development. The Chinese Vice President arrived in South Africa from Kenya. He will also visit Seychelles. From May the 1st, China will grant zero-tariff treatment to more than 50 African countries. The move extends zero-tariff policies previously given to 33 least developed African nations to another 20 countries. The zero-tariff policy will increase African nations' exports of value-added goods such as processed coffee, tuna, textiles, and specialized agriculture, reducing trade imbalances with China. The policy will grant African exports easier access to China's huge market. African nations may move beyond the raw commodity exports and into manufacturing. Bilateral logistics structures are also expected to be improved. China's Commerce Ministry says it has launched 2 reciprocal trade barrier investigations in response to recent U.S. Section 301 probes targeting China. It said the U.S. initiated one investigation involving 16 economies over alleged overcapacity and another involving 60 economies, including China, over concerns related to forced labor. The ministry said China strongly opposes both measures. The Chinese investigations will focus on U.S. practices that disrupt global supply chains and hinder trade in grain products. That's 29 minutes past the hour. Checking the forecast before the break. Beijing will be cloudy with a low of 7 tonight. Saturday will see light rain with a high of 19. Shanghai will see shower with a low of 10 tonight. Tomorrow overcast and 21. Chongqing will see light rain tonight and tomorrow with a low of 15 and a high of 21. Nanchang will be overcast tonight, then a low of 14 and a high of 21. Lhasa will see sleet tonight and tomorrow with a low of 2 and a high of 8. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad is down to 16 this evening. Saturday will have light rain with a high of 28 degrees Celsius. It's time for a short break. So far this hour, the Boao Forum for Asia concludes its annual conference in Hainan, highlighting open development and regional integration. US President Donald Trump has extended a pause on planned strikes on Iranian energy sites for 10 more days, amid reports that Tehran has responded to Washington's peace proposal. Tian Lu with you. Stay with us here on the Beijing Hour.
Shh, listen up. Can you hear the heartbeat of our world? It's vibrant and pulsating with the essence of life itself. From the stem of trees to the gurgle of rivers. From the silent strength of mountains to the icy whispers of glaciers. Even the solid ground beneath our feet. And right there, in the midst of all, beats the heart of humanity. What if those other heartbeats were to stop? Would ours keep on ticking?
Ever wondered what's actually going on in Africa through the perspective of an African? How are things really going between China and Africa? What's the narrative of this relationship? Well, get a perspective with China-Africa Talk. Hear from African diplomats, entrepreneurs, academics, Chinese natives, and more. Get on our wavelength every week to find out what's real with China-Africa Talk. Find us on your favorite podcast. We'll see you there.
Examining the events that impact and shape China and the rest of the world. This is the Beijing Hour, 1 hour of news and information brought to you every weekday. Now here's your host.
Tian Lu with you on this Friday. Still to come. In business, China sees fast industrial profit growth in first 2 months. In sports, Italy is 1 win away from ending their 12-year World Cup absence. In culture and entertainment, cultural diversity at Shanghai University. To contact us, you can email radio@cgtn.com or follow our X account @cgtnradio. But first, checking today's headlines. China's top legislator says China welcomes enterprises from all countries to invest and share opportunities from its high-quality development. Zhao Leji made the remarks during discussions with Chinese and foreign entrepreneurs attending the Boao Forum. He said China's economy remains resilient with strong potential and unchanged fundamentals for long-term growth. Entrepreneurs voiced support for economic globalization, expressed confidence in China's outlook, and pledged to stay engaged in the Chinese market for mutual benefit. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has called China the best partner of his country. Speaking at the reopening of an automotive plant in Anápolis, Lula expressed confidence that ties with China will continue to strengthen, citing expanding collaboration between businesses from both countries. Thursday's event marked the launch of the Unit T production line, developed in partnership with Chinese automaker Chang'an Automobile, with Lula praising the transfer of technology and investment into Brazil. Official figures show bilateral trade between Brazil and China reached about $188 billion in 2024, maintaining China's position as Brazil's largest trading partner. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi has called for renewed dialogue on the Middle East conflict. Speaking with his Canadian counterpart by phone, Wang warned that the misuse of force would have severe consequences and that the conflict's spillover threatens regional security. He noted the US and Iran's willingness to resume talks and urged the international community to support a political solution, adding that China and Canada can play a constructive role in this process. Anita Anand said the Iran nuclear issue is crucial to the global non-proliferation system and that ensuring safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz serves the shared interests of all. She expressed Canada's readiness to work with China to promote regional peace and stability. Iran has issued what it calls decisive warnings to hotel owners in several regional countries, urging them not to accommodate U.S. military personnel. According to Iran's semi-official Fars news agency, the warning particularly targets hotels in Bahrain and the UAE. It says any facilities hosting U.S. forces could be considered legitimate targets by Iranian armed forces. The report claims that following recent missile strikes against U.S. military infrastructure in West Asia, some American personnel have sought shelter in hotels across the region. It also cites informed sources as saying that such locations are not limited to Bahrain and the UAE, with alternative bases and shelters identified in other countries. A UN official is warning of a potential humanitarian collapse in Cuba amid the island's energy crisis and hurricane damage from last year. Washington imposed an energy blockade on Cuba after the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, stopping oil shipments from the island's main supplier. The fuel crisis has increased food prices for Cubans, caused severe fuel shortages, and resulted in major power outages. Francisco Pichon is the UN resident coordinator in Cuba.
It's essential to understand that at this very moment, there is already a critical situation regarding services in Cuba. If the current situation persists and the country's fuel reserves are depleted, we do fear an accelerated deterioration, potentially resulting in a loss of life.
Pichon estimated that the crippled energy grid was slated to cut off 96,000 people from getting surgeries they need and cause 30,000 miners to fall behind on vaccine schedules. It has already cut off 1 million people depending on water deliveries from trucks. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban says his country has shut down gas supplies to Ukraine until Russian oil deliveries resume through the Druzhba pipeline. Russian oil shipments to Hungary and Slovakia have been halted for nearly 2 months following reported drone damage to the pipeline crossing Ukraine. Both governments accuse Ukraine of deliberately delaying supplies, a claim Kiev denies. The dispute comes as Orban faces a tight race ahead of the parliamentary election on April the 12th, with polls showing him trailing a centre-right challenger. He has framed the election as critical to Hungary's future, warning that defeat could draw the country into the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Orban also accused Ukraine of attempting to influence Hungary's election through intelligence activities. The Hungarian leader has consistently opposed Western military aid to Ukraine and has threatened to block European Union support for Kiev. Coming up in business, China sees fast industrial profit growth in first 2 months.
The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
37 minutes past the hour, turning to business, here's Wang Zihang.
Thank you, Tianlu. Stock markets on the Chinese mainland closed higher on Friday. The Shanghai Composite gained over 0.6%. The Shenzhen component rose more than 1.1%. Energy, metal and pharmaceutical chemistry shares were among the top gainers. Elsewhere in Hong Kong, the Hang Seng Index was up nearly 0.4%. In Japan, the Nikkei decreased more than 0.4%. Profits of China's major industrial firms increased 15.2% on a yearly basis in the first 2 months of this year. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, emerging sectors such as equipment and high-tech manufacturing served as major growth drivers. Industrial firms with an annual main business revenue of at least 20 million yuan, or around $2.9 million, saw their combined profits exceed 1 trillion yuan during the period. The Bureau says local authorities stepped up the implementation of proactive macroeconomic policies during the period, focusing on the combined effects of both existing and new measures. As a result, profit growth accelerated, with most industries reporting a clear rebound. For more, Lincoln Humphreys spoke with Liu Zhiqin, a senior research fellow at the Chaoyang Institute for Financial Studies, Renmin University of China.
What are the leading factors behind this rapid growth in industrial enterprise profits in February, and how sustainable is this growth looking ahead for the rest of the year?
I believe that this data that shows that the resilience of China's economy, that the leading factors behind this rapid growth of the profits are based on three factors. One factor is that we have the policy stability, because as we know that China's policy is very stable and sustainable. This is globally that recognized by the economic all over the world. The second factor is very interesting, that the domestic market in China is very strong. That is the resilience of China's market. So in this way that the domestic market has a booming, also made the profit increase and a big surge in the first 2 months. And the third, of course, we see that the consequences of the structural reform taking place in China's economy that helped this profit surge in a big efforts. So in this way, we find all these factors are the major reasons that to have the high the companies and the industry's profit surge in the first 2 months. But we hope that for the rest of this year, this tendency and the momentum can remain stronger than before, because we are knowing that this year is the next 5 years planning, that the first year is very important for the next 5 years, the 15th 5 years. So we will do our best to promote all these possibilities to stimulate our economic development, especially the industry profit will be the focus of our reform.
Equipment manufacturing and high-tech manufacturing saw particularly rapid profit growth. What differentiates these high-growth sectors from the rest of the Chinese economy at the moment, and how is China's growing share of these markets affecting the global industrial chain?
As we know that China's high-tech development in the recent months that rapidly grows and become very strong in its the development. So I think because of two reasons. One is that all these technologies are the latest technologies reflecting that China's potential and also China's innovations capability. That shows that the great demand from the market. So that's why in the first line we see the profit grows rapidly, especially in the AI and the technology, smarter technology, green technology, for instance, and also in digitalization. In this high level of this technology developed very well. With the rest of the other manufacturing, they are always laid a solid basis for the high tech.
That was Liu Zhiqin from China's Renmin University. Industry data shows China's logistics sector also got off to a solid start in the first 2 months, with steady growth in social logistics volume. The volume reached 58.6 trillion yuan, or around $8.5 trillion from January to February, up 6.7% at comparable prices, marking a notable recovery. He Hui is the vice president of China Federation of Logistics and Purchasing.
We observed a notable rebound in logistics demand and continued structural improvements. The foundation for a favorable start to logistics operations is being further strengthened.
Domestic production and consumption logistics improved in tandem with international import logistics demand, with growth accelerating across all sectors compared to the same period last year. Industrial products logistics volume grew 6.3%, contributing over 80% to the overall growth of social logistics volume. High-end equipment manufacturing sectors, including computers, communications, and other electronic equipment, as well as railway, shipbuilding, and aerospace, all posted growth rates exceeding 10%. In addition, the total logistics volume for corporate and household goods grew 9.4% in the first 2 months, as new business forms such as instant delivery online retail flourished. This effectively drove robust growth in new types of consumption logistics demand. The China Academy of Information and Communications Technology, together with 40 other organizations, has released the country's first industry standard for the embodied artificial intelligence sector. The standard establishes a unified testing framework for embodied AI, marking a new phase where the industry now has formal criteria to follow. It focuses on key foundational AI technologies and benchmark testing methods. It also outlines the system framework and capability requirements for embodied AI. Specifically, the standard defines how to test embodied AI systems in both simulated and real-world environments, including the testing methods and performance indicators. A task library has already been developed, containing more than 10,000 tasks across 300 different types. These cover industries such as manufacturing, retail, and logistics. The standard is set to take effect on June the 1st. Now, northern France is rapidly emerging as a hub for electric vehicle production. From batteries to key components and upstream materials, Chinese companies are now involved in building what industry insiders call France's Battery Valley. Zhu Xuesong reports.
Near Renault's electric vehicle plant in Douai, automated production lines are already running. A Chinese-invested factory here produces power batteries for electric cars, supplying nearby assembly plants as automakers accelerate their transition to EVs.
We have already delivered 10,000 cars to Renault. And step by step, we will ramp up. And at the end of the year, it will be approximately 75,000 cars delivered from our plants.
The Renault 5, currently the best-selling electric car in France, relies on batteries produced here. Around the battery plant, other parts of the supply chain are also taking shape. From key cathode materials used in lithium-ion batteries to battery housings that hold and protect battery packs, Chinese technology is now present across several critical stages of EV production.
For the first generation of products, we even had to add computer numerical control machining after assembly to ensure precision after welding deformation. But in the second generation, we removed those processes. Now we are developing the third generation together with Renault.
Even traditional industries are adapting. TG Grisat, a 260-year-old copper producer, nearly collapsed before being acquired by a Chinese firm in 2016. Today, it is expanding again as electric vehicles drive new demand for copper.
We have transferred our experience from the electronics market to the automotive sector, to vehicle electrification and battery manufacturing. Today, these are strong growth markets that position us well and allow the company to continue expanding.
As Chinese companies expand their footprint in Europe, building factories here also means navigating strict regulations and integrating into established industrial networks.
Investing here means operating under the same regulatory framework as European manufacturers and producers. Under those conditions, it helps avoid stereotypes and shows that this cooperation benefits the Chinese economy, the European economy, and the French economy.
That was Zhu Xuefeng reporting.
Thank you very much. That was Wang Zihang with Business. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in sports, Italy is one win away from ending the 12-year World Cup absence.
Sideline Story brings you all things sports related. The hottest topics, latest events, juiciest stories, all with a very personal take. Subscribe to Sideline Story Podcast for heated sports discussions covering events that are happening in China and around the world.
Now it's 47 minutes past the hour, turning to sports. Starting with football, Italy has moved within one win of ending their 12-year World Cup absence. It came after a 2-0 playoff semi-final victory at home over Northern Ireland. Italy secured their place for Tuesday's playoff final away to Bosnia and Herzegovina, who defeated Wales on penalties in Cardiff. Italy's head coach Gennaro Gattuso stressed the importance of the playoff final, saying his team must now climb the world's biggest mountain.
We've taken a small step. Now
We have to climb the world's biggest mountain. We know that, and we're playing for it a lot. It is fair to say that I think we were all tingling here, including our president, Gigi Buffon, and everybody we've been in contact with these days. We were all tingling. You said the right word, ghost. Yes, because for now, we need one last match to complete the job.
Meanwhile, Northern Ireland's coach Michael O'Neill placed the team's emphasis on growth and preparations for Euro 2028 qualification.
We've got to recognise where we are as a nation and what we have to do. To get to a World Cup is extremely difficult. For us to get to a World Cup, we have to get there at the expense of a nation like Italy, which is a huge challenge. We obviously had a huge challenge in our group with Germany as well. I believe that, to get to this stage is a real positive. We will take this forward when qualification comes for Euro 2028. The players will be further along in their journey. We might have some additional players in the squad as well, but the squad is only going to continue to improve.
In World Cup qualifiers from elsewhere, Bolivia came from behind to edge Suriname 2-1 in Monterrey to book their place in the Intercontinental Playoff final. Bolivia will set up a decisive clash with Iraq on Tuesday, leaving them just one win away from a first World Cup finals since 1994, which was also the last time the USA hosted. Senegal is taking its battle to the Court of Arbitration for Sport after the Confederation of African Football stripped them of the Africa Cup of Nations title. Senegal's football chief Abdoulaye Faure also says the country will keep fighting for 18 fans still imprisoned in Morocco following that chaotic final in January.
Facing what resembles the crudest and most unique administrative robbery in the history of our sports teams, the Senegalese Football Federation refuses to accept defeat. Senegal does not bow down and does not compromise on its values. Our fight today goes beyond a simple green and sporting rectangle. This is about defending the honor of our wronged players, preserving the integrity of African football, and above all, fighting with all our might for our 18 supporters currently imprisoned in Moroccan jails.
In a stunning twist from the appeals board of the Confederation of African Football, Senegal has been declared to have forfeited the final. Senegal's 1-0 win in extra time became a 3-0 default win for host nation Morocco. The Chinese men's football team beat Curacao 2-0 in the 2026 FIFA series in Australia. It's Team China's first match under new coach Xiao Jiayi. Zhang Yuning contributed 1 goal and 1 assist with another goal from Wei Shihao. China will next face Cameroon on Tuesday. The FIFA series is an invitational competition. The 2026 edition features 48 teams in 12 groups, including 9 men's groups and 3 women's groups, with all 6 continental confederations represented. In basketball from the CBA, Nanjing Monkey Kings defeated Beijing Royal Fighters in the 108-101 away victory. Nanjing's new signer Parker Jackson Cartwright erupted for a game-high 44 points. You're listening to the Beijing Hour. Coming up in culture and entertainment, cultural diversity at Shanghai University.
From north to south, east to west, people in China are chasing their dreams and leaving their mark. Want to know how they beat the odds and made a difference? Footprints brings you the true life stories of their journeys.
Now it's 52 minutes past the hour, turning to culture and entertainment. Cultural diversity is being celebrated at Shanghai University of Traditional Chinese Medicine. Tang Xiaofan reports.
Russian candy, Zimbabwean drums, and traditional games from Sri Lanka. More than 200 international students from Shanghai University of TCM dressed up in national clothing and showcased cultural activities, performances, and specialties under apricot trees.
This dress is a secondary school dress. We are every day wearing this, and like this hair also. Every culture have different traditions and different games, and we are enjoying. I see every people enjoy here.
It's a very popular game that we have organized here. It
is called Aliyata Hatibima, or drawing the elephant's eye. So someone who's blindfolded, they rotate several times to disorient them, and then they aim at the eye of the elephant. It's very bustling. All the communities, like all the different cultures are coming together, and there are a lot of people experiencing it. I'm so happy.
It's a traditional attire from my tribe. I'm a musician as well. I can play drums, I can play music instruments. I've got tea from Zimbabwe, it's there, and then also we have dried apricots, because yes, in Zimbabwe we usually eat them dried up.
Most of these international students have come to China specifically to study traditional Chinese medicine.
I find traditional Chinese medicine as an interesting, natural way of treating the human body compared to Western medicine. My father is also a TCM practitioner, and my sister as well, but they studied in Beijing. They opened their own practice there back at home in Zimbabwe.
The apricot blossom is a symbol of TCM, as it can be used in herbal medicine. At Shanghai University of TCM, a series of activities related to the pretty flowers were also held. They included lacquer fan painting, herbal tea and sachet making, as well as paper cutting and calligraphy.
That was Tang Xiaofan reporting. Eye-catching clothing that pairs traditional motifs with contemporary touches is in the spotlight at the 2026 China Fashion Week in Beijing. The spring edition of the biannual event features over 230 brands and more than 400 designers. At a featured show, designers unveiled nearly 100 pieces bridging past and present. Art director Xu Derong said the show aims to showcase ancient craftsmanship with a modern twist.
Inspired by thousands of years of craftsmanship and heritage, we integrate traditional patterns and weaving skills with modern designs and intelligent weaving, launching a series of fashion products that blend Chinese charm with contemporary trends.
The show also highlighted sustainability, with designers transforming eco-friendly materials into trendy pieces. Beijing and Moscow have launched a 5-year choral art collaboration program, strengthening cultural ties between the two sides. The partnership is between the Beijing Polytheatre and the Tchaikovsky Moscow State Conservatory. A signing ceremony took place at the Forbidden City Concert Hall, marking what officials are calling a milestone in cultural exchange between China and Russia. This ambitious partnership will feature international choral conducting masterclasses, a tour of China by the renowned Tchaikovsky Moscow State Conservatory Choir, and a joint international choral festival. The program aims to blend performance, education, and academic research to strengthen ties between the musical communities of China and Russia. The launch event itself was capped off with a performance. The Tangshan Grand Theatre Children's Choir, led by Professor Alexander Solovyev from the Moscow Conservatory, performed the beloved Chinese folk classic Jasmine Flower, a performance seen as a symbol of the harmonious fusion between the two musical traditions. Now it's 57 minutes past the hour, checking the forecast for the day. Beijing will be cloudy with a low of 7 tonight. Saturday will see light rain with a high of 19. Shanghai will see shower with a low of 10 tonight. Tomorrow overcast with a high of 21. Chongqing will see light rain tonight, then a low of 15 and a high of 21. Nanchang will be overcast tonight, then a low of 14 and a high of 21. Lhasa will see sleet tonight and tomorrow with a low of 2 and a high of 8. Elsewhere in Asia, Islamabad is down to 16 this evening. Saturday will have light rain with a high of 28. Vientiane will be overcast with a low of 27 overnight. Tomorrow sunny with a high of 38 degrees Celsius. That's it for this edition of the Beijing Hour, making news today. The Boao Forum for Asia concludes its annual conference in Hainan, highlighting open development and regional integration. US President Donald Trump has extended a pause on planned strikes on Iranian energy sites for 10 more days, amid reports that Tehran has responded to Washington's peace proposal. On behalf of staff, this is Tianlu in the Chinese capital, hoping you'll join us for the next edition of the Beijing Hour and open the window to the world together.
Find the Beijing Hour at precisely 6 p.m. Beijing time. We meet you on podcast and on air every weekday. The Beijing Hour, your window on China and the rest of the world.
He can't live without the Yellow River in his eyes.
The Yellow River is so noble and elegant.
Both my grandpa and dad made a living from the river.
Would you like to move away from the Yellow River?
I don't think I will. I love it so much.
The Yellow River, the second longest river in China, is regarded as a shaping force in the history, economy and culture of northern China. Today, about 100 million people live within its water basin, making up nearly 9% of the country's population. How is climate change felt at its headwaters, and what are the locals doing to cope with it? What are the descendants of the boatmen doing? What has kept some people from leaving their home village by the river, and what has drawn others back? Could the fading fishing community revive in a time of digital transformation? From 2021 to 2024, our reporters visited the upper, middle and lower reaches of the Yellow River, talked to the herders, farmers, boatmen, fishermen and eco-activists who share a close bond with the river, and present their stories in pictures, podcasts and videos, all in our 12-part series, The Yellow River Mosaic, available only on CGTN Radio